If you're married, doesn't your heart long for connection and goodness, for intimacy? I'm Dr. Carol. Thank you for joining me on this episode. So many of the married people I talk with aren't experiencing that. If your marriage is wonderful and fulfilling, beautiful, but even for you, can there be more? Can intimacy become even better? Well, I have a very special conversation to share with you today. My friends, Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith, have been helping couples build true intimacy for a number of years. They learned many of the things they're going to share with us today from their own experience as well as their professional studies and work. Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith both have master's degrees from Fuller Seminary in different areas. Matthew is a certified and professional life and relationship coach. He has his Master's of Divinity degree. He and Joanna have been on staff at various churches. Joanna is a licensed marriage and family therapist and special training in partner trauma recovery. They together help couples deal with when intimacy isn't broken. Recovering from betrayal is a significant part of their work. They have released a book not long ago, Building True Intimacy, Creating a Connection that Stands the Test of Time. If your marriage is not experiencing the kind of intimacy that your heart desires, this is especially for you, with some practical steps about how you can get to intimacy. And that, what I'm just illustrating here, you'll hear more about that in just a moment. Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith. Well, Matthew and Joanna Raabsmith, I consider you friends. This is going to be a great conversation. Thank you so much for being here.
So glad to be with you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. It's been really fun to get to know you over the years, get to see you at a lot of different conferences and stuff.
Yes, yes. We saw each other just a few months ago at ACC, and that was awesome. And you gifted me with a copy of your book. We'll talk about that in a minute. I am so grateful. For those who may have been following our podcast for a while, you've been on our program once before, and that was so good. I'm going to link to that episode if people wanted to check out that conversation. In that conversation, we talked a bit more about your stories, but I just like a snapshot for people who may not know you and who haven't heard that. Just how did you get to this? A little bit about your own challenges that brought you to deal with the intimacy and marriage and restoration and all of that.
Great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we got to this place now working with couples, writing on this topic, trying to help relationships and marriages really thrive because our own relationship was really affected by addiction and betrayal. And we, even though we had a really great connection with each other, the things that I had brought into the marriage were really keeping us from moving up towards the kind of relationship we wanted. And when all of those secrets kind of spilled out and came out, we really had to start all over for all intensive purposes. And so that kind of left us with a quandary of how the heck do we do that?
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because when we first met and got married, we were both pretty passionate about having a healthy relationship. We really cared about that, but neither one of us had a lot of great instruction on how to do that. So we were kind of floundering a little bit. And then when the betrayal came out, everything was just kind of devastated. And so that it kind of was the impetus for figuring out, like, we really have to figure this out now. We don't have a choice. We can't take our time anymore. And so we were blessed with a lot of incredible resources through our journey. But what we found in the recovery process was there was a ton of resources for Matthew, the betrayer. There was a few resources for me at the time. This is quite a while ago. And there's almost zero resources for the couple, for the relationship. Very little direction for how to heal, how to build a healthy relationship, how to rebuild a healthy relationship. And so through our journey, both personally and professionally, we ran into Dan Drake and collaborated with him to build a model of building healthy relationship. And we were so excited about it because it really reflected the path we had taken reflected the
Yes.
path we're taking our clients through. And
Yeah.
it just made it really clear. So as soon as we started sharing it with clients, every single one was so excited to finally have a picture of hope, really, is what it is.
Yeah. I talk with people regularly that feel stuck in some of the very places you've alluded to. You know, one common scenario, a husband will have struggled with, porn or sex addiction or maybe even affairs. And okay, he's sober, he's not acting out, but the marriage may continue to deteriorate. The typical, wife, okay, may have worked through some of the worst of the trauma, but I don't feel like I can trust my husband. There's still no that I don't feel there's nothing in me that wants to come closer. And
Yes.
both of them going in their own lane, that maybe even going farther apart rather than coming closer together. So I don't think your story is unique. And
Mhm.
this piece about building the relationship,
Yes.
I think is something the two of you really have to offer. I'm just going to let people know, building true intimacy, creating a connection that stands the test of time. The two of you and Dan Drake wrote this together. You gifted this to me. I've read it. It's really, really good stuff. Um,
Yeah.
the foundation of this is the intimacy pyramid.
Mhm.
And let me just next give the two of you a couple minutes just to talk about the big structure of the pyramid. And then I've
Yeah.
got some specific questions about some specific
Awesome.
pieces in there.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah, the intimacy pyramid really got built around this idea of what are couples after, right? What are couples who have had to start all over? What do
Mhm.
they want at the end, right? Because if they're going to invest all this time and all this energy and all this money, what is it that they want? They want connection, intimacy that is thriving, right? That it's
Mhm.
life-giving, that
Yeah.
it's really overflowing both for them and
Mhm.
and for others, right? And
Yeah.
so if this is what we want, how do we get it, right? we
Mhm.
we, we wanted it before, we didn't get it. Now
Yeah.
that we want it, how do we get it? And
Yeah.
so we just started kind of conceptualizing with Dan, okay, what are the pieces that have to fall in place, right? That,
Mhm.
for instance, you can't have intimacy without vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
You've got to be in a relationship where
Mhm.
people are risking, right? They're giving of themselves,
Mhm.
knowing that that's a risk,
Yeah.
right? And so to be
Yeah.
able to be really unified in one, as scripture tells us, right, that the two become one, you've
Mhm.
Yes.
got to have some vulnerability in that, right? I've
Yeah.
got to be willing to give
Yeah.
myself,
Yeah. But a lot of people jump right into vulnerability and intimacy without actually building what's needed to have a healthy vulnerability, a healthy intimacy, right? And so foundational for being able to risk and be vulnerable, you have to have a foundation of trust underneath that vulnerability, right? And so really thinking about what does it look like to be trustworthy, right?
Mhm.
To show up in a relationship as a trustworthy person. So relationally, you're experiencing the mutual experience of trust.
Yeah, and to
Mhm.
have trust, right? That's wonderful to say, and everyone goes, okay, yeah, absolutely, a relationship built on
I
trust.
trust you.
What do we do when trust has been broken, right? What do we
Mhm.
do when trust isn't there in the
Yeah.
relationship for verifiable reasons, right? We have the
Mhm.
record that says this, this situation isn't trustworthy. And
Mhm.
so we started talking about, well, really, the thing that you need to be able to trust is you need safety in the relationship, right?
Mhm.
You need to be in a relationship that is safe. And really,
Mhm.
safety is about the fact that I can depend
Yeah.
on my partner to show up healthy, right, engaged, investing in the
Mhm.
relationship. And I
Yeah.
can experience that consistently, right? If I have a safe experience of knowing kind of what I'm going to get,
Mhm.
and that's going to be us working together,
Yep.
that's what's going to allow me to
Yeah.
trust, right? And
Yeah.
on
I don't know if you've ever gone rock climbing, but we've been doing it with our children lately, and they have these auto belays, right? And
Yep.
we climbed this 55-foot tower, and every time I have a little pit in my stomach, like it's gonna catch me again this time, right? And so going like, if it only caught me 30% of the time, am I gonna go
Yes.
up that wall again? No,
Right.
it's gotta catch me 100% of the time. That consistency, reliability of safety is so important if you are going to experience trust in a relationship.
And
Yeah.
so to have safety, right? That's the thing we all go, okay, yep, to have safety. Well, what have we learned from couples in betrayal is that when honesty is taken from the relationship, right? When I deceive or I hide, I lie, either because of shame or self-protection, right?
Yeah.
When honesty is eroded and lost, there is no safety, right? So to have safety, that really brings us back to the beginning, right? Which is that we have to be honest. We have to be in a relationship that's built on transparency and the practice of sharing with each other, right?
And what's been so fun is we've developed this, it started for couples who have experienced betrayal, but as we work with all couples in our practice, we're realizing this applies to every couple, right? It is
Sure.
amazing how many relationships out there haven't experienced major betrayal, but they are not living openly, transparently, authentically with one another on a day-to-day basis, right? So almost every couple we see, we start at the bottom of the pyramid, right? And we define honesty very robustly. It's not just lying or deception, right? There's a lot of pieces in there. And so that's why I think it applies to so many couples.
Yeah. And so the framework is really there just to let couples see what the journey
Mhm.
looks like, but also to evaluate what we've done so far,
Yeah.
right? For
Where are
that,
we at?
for that couple that you talked about,
Yeah.
right? Where they have some growth, right? Maybe they have
Mhm.
some progress individually. They still
Mhm.
have to figure out, wait, where are we relationally? Like, do we have an
Mhm.
honest relationship?
Yeah.
Do we have a safe relationship,
Mhm.
right? How vulnerable, how trusting, right?
Yeah.
That's going to tell us where our work is. And that's one of the
Yeah.
things we really like about the framework is not just the kind of path, but also the way couples can self-evaluate. They can kind of
Yes.
check in and go,
Yeah.
oh, we're not doing so
Yes.
great,
And
right?
normalize their experience. I have a lot of couples who are really frustrated. We're not experiencing vulnerability and intimacy. And I'm like, yeah, because you don't have any safety. And they kind of look at it and go, oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes. I think of one woman I spoke with this week. Actually, she wrote to me and we communicated that way. And she was saying, He's not watching porn anymore, but I don't trust him." And the lies, she said, the lies have hurt even more than the behaviors. And I don't have any sense that he is being honest with me.
Mhm. Exactly.
And I'm sure, similar variations of that aren't that uncommon. What
Yeah.
are some things that a couple needs to work on who are struggling with just that first layer, honesty?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the hidden kind of roadblocks to honesty is awareness, right? And so we talk about in our book, right,
Mhm.
that being unaware is really a major preventer to being honest.
Yeah.
And there's different types of honesty, right?
Mhm.
There's this idea of deception and lies, right? I'm
Yeah.
trying to take
Actively
information and
choosing.
manipulate it, right? And that
Mhm.
often stops when there's discovery and right, the
Mhm.
couple kind of says, okay, I'm done lying, right? I'm not gonna deceive you anymore.
Mhm.
But what ends up happening is my lack of awareness means that I don't recognize how I'm showing up, right,
Yeah.
in the relationship. And so I work with a
Mhm.
lot of guys who
Mhm.
have a lot of shame, right? They have a lot of shame over what they've done, right? And so when
Mhm.
they start talking about their day or their week, even if they were in kind of good recovery, their shame, their anxiety, their nervousness comes out, right? And they're not aware of it. And so
Mhm.
they'll be reporting to their partner and it looks like lying again, right? It's like, well,
Mm,
Mhm.
I don't think I did anything wrong. I mean,
Mhm.
and you can hear them and you're like, I don't kind of experience you as transparent, right? And
yes.
and so that's what happens with a lot of couples is even though
Yeah.
there's progress, the relational experience is still one of kind of lack of clarity,
Yeah.
right? This lack of
Yeah. If you've
transparency.
ever been with someone and you can tell they're bothered or frustrated, right? And you ask them, "Hey, what's going on?" Or,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
like, "Nothing, I'm fine." Right? You're like,
Fine. Yeah. The old
"Okay."
acronym for fine. Amped up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
There you
We'll
go.
be a little
There you
careful of our
go.
words
Yeah.
here, but yeah, I'm not fine.
Yeah, you're not fine, but you're saying you are, and maybe you even believe that you are, but I can tell you're not, right? And so I have a lot of partners I work with. That's kind of the experience they're having in the relationship, right? They're picking up on things that their spouse isn't even picking up on, and that feels really unsafe for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Um, okay, let's just keep going a bit. What does safety really look like? You talked a little bit about that. But it's something that I will often ask someone, do you feel safe in your relationship? And sadly, most of the time they're stuck on no, I don't feel safe and I don't know what to do to get there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, we define it as like safety is this sense of relational security. It's created by ongoing constructive behavior from each partner, right? And so it's about what kind of actions are we seeing in the relationship consistently, right?
Yeah.
And are these actions that build and strengthen and kind of nurture the relationship, right? Or are they actions that kind of create disconnection, right? Some destruction. And so kind of, for example, defensiveness is one of those things that really harms the relationship because it doesn't allow us to get to the issue, right? So if we're talking about a topic or an issue, maybe it's our budget, right? And I start to get really defensive over, kind of either how I spend money or, the way we do, the kind of way I live, right? That's not helping us work on our budget.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And so it's harming our ability to work together, and that'll start to feel really unsafe, right? The other partner will go, wait, hold on, we can't work on this. So that would be the kind of example that of behaviors that show up in a relationship that are limiting trust. And what we know is these behaviors were probably there before, right? Even as a part of the betrayal relationship, right? And so if a partner knows, okay, well, before when I would ask him about what he was doing with his time, he would get defensive, right? He would start to get defensive and he would start to kind of shift. Well, if he's getting defensive again, what else is he maybe hiding, right? What else is maybe not there, right? And so even if that's not the case, the experience is the same for a lot of partners and in a lot of relationships. And so we really work with couples to go, yeah, we've got a lot to fix for this relationship to start feeling safe again.
Yeah. And when we talk about safety, we kind of highlight specifically responsibility, reliability, and regulation, right? And so, and obviously there's so much that can fall under each of those categories, but one of the main ones we see around responsibility that's really important, a shift that usually needs to happen in the relationship. A lot of times the betrayed spouse has been nurturing and putting in those constructive behaviors for a long season, not knowing their spouse has checked out of the relationship into addiction, into the betrayal, right? And so to rebuild that sense of safety through responsibility, the spouse who committed the betrayal now needs to show up and start putting into the relationship, initiating recovery steps, right? If it continues to be that betrayed spouse that's setting up counseling sessions, that's researching, that's
Listening to
moving
podcasts.
the couple forward, it's going to stay imbalanced, and an imbalanced relationship feels unsafe. And so that ability to take responsibility for the relationship, to initiate caring for the relationship, that's the steps of healing that they need to do, that balance has to come back to probably not even equal, right? We usually say it needs to flip-flop for a period of time, right? So you can eventually rebalance. And so that's a piece that comes up quite often.
Yeah.
As we're talking about honesty and safety, one thing that occurs to me, you can't only experience safety when your partner is 100% perfect, because we're all remain human beings. So what do you do when there's something that comes up, even as you're working to rebuild the connection and intimacy toward that? Okay, you've let me down again. Whether that was intentional or knowing, and it may be triggering old stuff, it may be all that, but I feel hurt again. What happens then?
Yes, absolutely.
I think that, the repair process for violations is such an integral part to the kind of future of couples, right? And so, one of the things I do think that couples who've experienced betrayal and infidelity do get is we don't get to ignore things and move on, right? The things that happened, we're going to have to talk about, we're going to have to deal with, right? We're going to have to make right. And the couples who do really well and move towards intimacy, they learn how to do that in the big ways and the small ways, right? And so, right, part of the recovery journey is learning how to kind of to take responsibility, as Joanna said, for that those big wounds, right? Those big betrayals, but then also learning, oh, when I tell you I'm going to have, I'm going to be home at 6 o'clock, right? And then I'm home at 7:30 and I don't communicate, and you're left wondering, right? Wait, what's going on again, right? Am I back in this relationship I can't rely on? It's my job to address that violation. Now, it may not be the same size as the violations that occurred before, but I still need to address it, right? We talk about there's a relational debt that occurs when I violate, when I take away love and trust. I got to put that back. And that may be by acknowledging the impact of my actions and going, hey, I recognize that not being a man of my word, right, is really difficult, right, for you and for us. And so I want to acknowledge, right, the fact that I was late without communicating that's not okay, right? And here's what I'm going to be doing going forward so that you know that I'm committed to this, right? That I am in the process of change. Because like you said, this is not about, can the betraying spouse be perfect? And once they're perfect, now we've got this perfect couple. Right? That's why we love responsible, right? It's not, can I be perfect? Can I be responsible? And then can I be responsible so consistently that even if I make mistakes, you trust that I'll address them, right? And so that's really what allows couples to move into trust, right? It's not, hey, I went 6 months and didn't make a single mistake, right? Some of our best couples, betraying spouses, are making lots of mistakes, right? They're learning a lot, but they're engaging the process of repair that allows them to move forward.
Well, and knowing that it's so much of that is relationally based, right? I think a lot of couples also think, well, the addiction was the problem, so sobriety is the answer, right? And then, like you were saying earlier, you got the sobriety, but the relationship is not. What's going on, right? And realizing, no, the safety isn't just about taking away that destructive action. It's about rebuilding these healthy, constructive behaviors to build the safety. And so there's some interesting kind of studies and research out there to kind of help couples understand what's the right balance, right? Because perfection 100%, that's not possible for any of us, right? But there is a number that you need to experience a felt sense of safety. And some of the research has said kind of 90 to 95%. Sometimes another one is you need 20 positive interactions for every one negative interaction, right? So I tell these numbers to my couples to go, okay, you can't stop at 60% safety, right? Reliability of healthy constructive behaviors and call it good. You won't have the experience of the relationship you want. You do have to have probably higher expectations for yourself than you did pre-discovery. And then, like Matthew's saying, for those moments when we're not going to be perfect, we're not going to get it right, do we know how to repair? Do we know how to reconnect as a couple and turn those moments around?
I am so glad you talked about repair, because every couple is going to do things that end up harming each other, even if it's just in small ways. And forgiveness doesn't mean, oh, it doesn't matter. The ability to repair is so important. And I think every couple is going to need that skill for the rest of their lives.
Oh, for sure. We know from personal experience. we repair on a regular basis. So good. So good.
I can think of the possibility that somebody listening or watching is going to say, well, I'm working on this, but my spouse isn't. I'm being honest and I'm working on being safe, but my spouse isn't. Talk just for a minute about somebody who feels that disconnect.
Yeah, that's something that absolutely does happen, right? And that is the experience of a betrayal relationship, like Joanna said, right? That a betrayed partner does have to kind of reckon with the reality that while I was putting in, right, even if it wasn't perfectly, but while I was putting in, I was in a relationship with someone who wasn't, right? And then maybe I didn't even know that, right? I didn't know that dynamic. And so I think, recognizing that fact and knowing that there may be pieces along the way where that's happening. I think what we like about our framework is saying it all comes back to honesty, right? And so when that's not occurring, we need to get honest about it, right?
Yeah.
We need to have
Amen.
an authentic and honest conversation about, hey, this is my experience, right? What I'm experiencing right now is a kind of being in this process alone, but I want to check that in with you, right? I want to see, right? And depending on the couple, they may need a third party, right? I think one of the things that is helpful about having trained professionals walk with you along the journey is they can help you see, right? Because there are going to be times where I perceive things and they are going to either be reality or not reality, right? There has been multiple times in our relationship where I have perceived, right, this idea that Joanna's not in, right? She's not in our relationship. She's not in it with me, right? And it has not taken, sometimes it's taken me longer than it should, but hopefully it doesn't take me too long to recognize, wait, no, even though I may feel that way, I may have that perception, that's not the case, right? And I can look at our relationship. But sometimes it is helpful to have a third party who can kind of help you see reality, right? What is really happening and how do we deal with that?
Yeah. And so many of the partners I work with, right, part of the work we do is, I want to empower them to realize their healing isn't dependent on their spouse. Right. And going, and in some ways, right, you can walk through that pyramid yourself and focus on your healing and your journey, right? And knowing, okay, focus on yourself and learn how to empower yourself to be less and less emotionally dependent on your spouse's decisions, right? Because you can't control those. There's certainly ways you can show up in your relationship that can have an influence, a larger or smaller influence on those things, right? But really making sure my healing is not attached to the outcome of this other person's healing is really important.
Yeah.
That's good. So each individual person can continue to become whole regardless of what happens with the relationship.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
100%.
That's good.
Yeah.
Trust. Some people that I hear from feels like I can either trust my partner or I can't. And one of the things you talk about is it may not be all or none.
Yeah. It needs to not be all or none, probably, right? And that's one of the kind of sit down conversations we usually have is you probably will not get to 100% trust in this person again. And that's a good thing. You probably didn't ever need to be that trusting of a human being who's flawed and broken and will fail you at some point, right? And so going, okay, our goal is not 100%, it's 98%, right? And it's a continuum, right? And so tracking where we're at can be really helpful, right? Kind of stepping back, taking a look at the relationship, a look at the changes. One of the things I do with partners along the way as well is kind of a lot of times they do kind of an impact letter right after discovery, if you're familiar with that, right? And kind of like tell the story. I have them keep telling their story as they heal and get stronger and stronger and stronger. Tell the story of your relationship now. What does it look like now, right? Because otherwise we might miss, like Matthew was saying, the reality of where we're at. And so maybe I'm missing the ways we have been growing and I've been scared to step into trust, right? And then going, and what does it look like to step 5% into trust? Not jump off the high dive, right? Like we are just taking one step. What does that look like, right? I'm going to be vulnerable this much, right? And so some of that sometimes is going, how do I wait and let my partner demonstrate that they're willing to show up vulnerably in ways they weren't? That communicates I'm now safe to step into, but they're little baby steps, right? Not like you said, not just diving in.
Yeah. And when I work a lot with husbands who are kind of standing in that betrayer space, right? And I will often say to them, your goal is to be trustworthy, not to be trusted, right? Trusting is the action of the other person. And so But I think we get it backwards, right? I'm just going, what do I need to do to get you to trust me, right? Or why won't you trust me? Rather than just focusing on my job is to be trustworthy. As I am trustworthy, people will trust me, right?
And when you go about it the other way, that's a controlling behavior, which is going to feel unsafe, which is going to break down trust, right? So you're working yourself backwards down the pyramid if you approach it that way.
We could spend just as much or more time on the last levels, vulnerability and intimacy, but just maybe a minute or two of a picture of what can be. Playfulness is an element that you talked about that I thought was particularly great. There's several others in those last couple levels of the pyramid, but just paint us a picture of what can be.
Yes. It does really get fun as you get farther and farther up. And we talk about that kind of those last phases are really the renewal phase, right? We kind of have this recovery phase where it's like we're just trying to survive, right? And not have an implosion, right? That's the early part of the process. Restoration is around that trust work, right? I'm trying to restore trust. We're becoming a couple again. And after restoration, then we get into renewal. We get to be vulnerable. We get to risk, like we said earlier, right? I get to actually be in a relationship where I'm really leaned in because I know the foundation that we've built. And that is what really starts to create more opportunities for healing, for the wounding, right, that we've experienced either in our childhood or potentially the wounding in the relationship itself. And so there's really that vulnerability phase is such a healing phase and a kind of deepening connection phase that sets us up for intimacy that really it's life-giving, right? And it's where I get excited about things, right? I get excited about who we are. I get excited about what we do. Like I said, we get to reintegrate play and playfulness, and we get to drop, these inhibitions go away, and we really get to be naked and unashamed, right? Relationally, right? I get to be one again. And so that last part of the work, the ball really starts rolling quickly, and we still have a lot of things to do. There's still a lot of work that we're continuing to maintain, but we start seeing the fruit so much more.
And we find couples that do this work and build from the bottom up, even if they're rebuilding, they experience vulnerability and intimacy that is the most amazing that you can experience in relationship, right? And it doesn't really matter if you've been through betrayal or not. And sometimes even going through that means you're going to experience a deeper connection, vulnerability, intimacy, right? Because if you've worked so hard and dug so deep in yourself for that healing, that awareness, right? You know yourself more fully, so you can be more fully known by your partner, right? And so because of all the work you've done and hard work you've done in those levels, you now get to experience this absolutely incredible connection through that vulnerability where your hearts, your emotions, your brain, your spirit are all connected. And it's really powerful. And we find that one of the other pieces around intimacy we usually talk about is purpose, right? And couples who have been through this and been through this journey come out with such incredible purpose, experience of purpose as a couple, right? Like there is a reason we are together. There is something unique about us, about our relationship, about what we can give to others and give to the world. And so it's really exciting to see couples emerging from kind of, like I said, all that hard work they've been doing to this place where their relationship is bringing them life, but not just them, bringing life to the people they love around them.
Yes. You two demonstrate that, just your own story and the work that you do now. It just, you demonstrate that as exhibit A. I love it. You've talked about work. You used that word a few times. I think there may be some people that feel like, well, if I married the right person, perfect intimacy would just happen.
That'd be nice.
Exactly. And so, just kind of the last question here. Just talk about the importance of work, that this is important enough. We have to be intentional in building it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they could write that book, we'll buy it, right? Just how to find the right person so marriage isn't any work. I think what is true is when you get to those upper levels, you get excited about the work. And I think we know what it's like to meet someone who has a calling, right? Personally, right? And that, you can tell because they're excited about what they're doing. They can't wait to share it with people. They're excited to start the next day. And this, of course, is not 100% of the time, right? We all have our kind of ebbs and flows of energy and excitement, but over and abundantly, I think when you get to those places of intimacy, you get excited about coming back down and working on things, right? We go through seasons where we're excited to say, hey, we really need to work on our assertiveness, right? I need to work on being more comfortable sharing openly in our relationship. And I'm excited about that because I know it's going to just kind of compound to better and better things. And so it is work, but it's work that it's not that kind of labor in vain. It's that labor and you're like, wow, this is good, right? Even if it takes some time for it to produce, there's a level of kind of joy to it, right? It's that we talk about like good tired, right? That's the kind of sense of the work you get to do when you have a really intimate relationship.
One of the best quotes from my grad school professors, very randomly in one of our classes, said is, everyone marries the wrong person. Because we're all broken. We all bring our pain and our coping into relationships that, can create disconnection. It's what are we going to do with that reality, right? What are we going to choose on a day-to-day basis? And I think, another word that comes to mind is investment, right? Maybe that's more appropriate. I am investing my time, my energy, my resources, my whole self into this relationship because I know the return on that investment is going to be pretty good, right? The research shows that one of the most important things for individuals to thrive in this life is secure attachment, is the ability to be safe and vulnerable with another human being, right? And so I am investing, or I am working at building a secure attachment so I get to reap all the benefits of that. And so, it's going to take some effort. It's going to take getting uncomfortable, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Building True Intimacy, we'll have the links to your wonderful book that you did with Dan Drake under the video and in the show notes for the audio. We'll also have links to, your website and the Renewing Us program that you have. And I just want to give you guys a moment to let people know what is that part of what you do.
Yeah, this has been a new development in our work the last couple of years, and it's been really fun. And what we've really wanted to do is to have a place for couples who have done that deep work of kind of early recovery, right? They've probably done a full disclosure, right? The things that they've done recovery, their sobriety, there's some trust that's probably restored a little bit, right? They kind of have agreed like, okay, I think we're going to be partners again. But they're also in that phase that they're like, what next, right? What does setting ourselves up for the rest of our lives look like? And so we created a group program where we have teaching videos, we have processing groups, we have an online community, and it's really a place for couples who want that great relationship and know that they really need to kind of build the rhythms and the habits and the skills to maintain it over the long haul. And so it's a really fun program. We launch new cohorts about every 2 months. And so people can go and kind of find out a little bit more about it. And it's fun to watch the community grow. And one of our things that we're most excited about is a lot of our graduates are coming back and they're leading other groups, right? They're leading other cohorts. They're finding their calling, right? And saying, I want to do this more. And so we've been really blessed to kind of start this process.
And part of it, our journey, felt very isolated as a couple going through this. And we didn't have a lot of other couples that had the passion for healthy relationship like we did. And so we know there are so many other couples out there with that experience. And so we wanted to create a community, a place for them to meet each other and be encouraged on a weekly basis. So it's been really fun to see that happening.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, both of you, Matthew and Joanna, for this conversation, for your work, for the book, Building True Intimacy, and the other work. And I just want to encourage our listeners to check the links, connect with you guys, and just thank you. And many blessings to you, your family, your work, and many, many more years ahead.
Thank you so much.
Great to be here.
Oh, check the links to Matthew and Joanna's site and their Renewing Us program. Do check that out. If you and your spouse are in any way at the point of working together to build something good, intimacy-wise, and dealing with the honesty and safety and trust along the way, well, I can definitely recommend their work. And get this book, Building True Intimacy. I also want to let you know that next week, if you're watching this when it first comes out, next week, my book, Sexpectations, Reframing Your Good and Not So Good Stories About God, Love, and Relationships, this comes out next week. To celebrate, we are having a YouTube live book launch party here on YouTube on Tuesday, February 13th. In the link below this, you'll see the link to that live. So if it's not yet the 13th in the evening, well, mark your calendars and join me there. I'll also have a link under this video to one of my articles about the kind of intimacy God intended for you. And we've been talking especially about married intimacy on this program today, but this need for intimacy in your soul is not relationship status dependent. And so if you're still listening and you're not married, know that your heart needs matter also. And check that article. I would hope you are subscribed, so each week when we bring you new material, you can be notified and get that. I would love to hear from you also. Every comment that you leave, I read. And if you'd like to leave me a confidential message, you can come over to our website, drcarolministries.com, use the contact page there, and that gets me a confidential message. Thank you again, and until next time, may God bless you.